Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, I wasn't sure when I watched this movie, The Lobster, if I was going to finish it or not. I actually watched this within 2 days. I watched the last half an hour of it today, and then, the rest of the movie I watched yesterday. That wasn't originally how I was gonna, watch it or anything. It's just that, it was getting, a bit too much for me. Not thankfully graphically, which I was worried it was going to, because there's some violent things that happen of people being blinded and dogs getting kicked, but you don't thankfully actually get to see those actions on the screen. You just see the results, and it would have been more graphic or a bit too much for me to actually physically see those on screen. I think for me, what made me just not want to finish the movie at first was it's the way the characters treat each other. Everyone kind of acts robotic, and they're all kind of following social rules. No one's really forced to do anything, but it's kind of social rules of things and expectations that kind of create the danger. But everyone's kind of so mean to each other and inauthentic. I just wasn't really enjoying it. I felt like I was kind of forcing myself towards the middle of it. And then so I stopped, and then I changed my mind today, and I was like, you know what, I want to at least see how this movie ends, and then I can make a video on it and stuff, because I was going to make a video on it anyway. And the last 30 minutes were actually my favorite, and now I feel a little better about the movie. I want to talk about the music first. The music in this is very beautiful, has a lot of violins, and sometimes the violins sound really nice, and sometimes they sound kind of scary. I think my favorite song was actually whatever the music was in the credits, or any of the parts that had very gentle, kind of a Spanish guitar in there. Any of those kind of songs I think were the ones that I enjoyed the most, to the point where I was like, okay, I need to start listening to this soundtrack on Spotify. And I feel having music in this movie where there wasn't really any lyrics or anything, and a lot of it is either goes from being kind of gentle and slow to being kind of a little intense and scary, matched really well with the movie. It has a very slow kind of pace to it. The director for this movie, there's one other of his that I had watched, because this one came out in 2015. I remember it got a bunch of awards and stuff, but the other movie of his that I'd watched is Poor Things, with Emma Stone, where it's the one where it's a baby brain that gets put into its mom or something. These are both weird movies. I think I preferred Poor Things a little more, which is funny because that's the one that's way more sexual, and I wasn't really into that part of it. I'm not really into that kind of thing, but that one was kind of more weird. It almost made me think of a really weird version of Frankenstein or something. I think I got into it a bit more, but this one was actually kind of nice too. I wasn't expecting to say that, given my thoughts on it yesterday. I don't know if it's the same director who did that one movie, or I know he has Emma Stone in at least 3 of his movies, where it's these two guys. It's a remake of some, I think, Korean movie, but I'm not sure, of Save the Green Planet or whatever, of these two people who kidnap a CEO and they make her bald because they think that she's an alien. I think that's the same director, but I'm not sure. I was a little curious about that movie, because that's the thing, I get curious about his movies from the premises and stuff of them, and then I actually watch them and I'm oh, because they're all sort of really weird, but also can feel kind of bleak and confusing, and not particularly something I enjoy to watch, but I still don't regret watching them anyway. It's they're kind of uncomfortable to watch, but I think they're supposed to make you feel uncomfortable, and it's a level of that I can handle, if that makes sense. But I will say with this one, and with some of his other movies, maybe don't watch them if you're kind of in a bad mood, because I feel it would make it worse. I was actually watching some happy Christmas movies and stuff before I watched The Lobster yesterday, before I started. I was over here watching Santa Claus 3, and then I had heard the premise of the Lobster. I read about it somewhere of like, oh, people they have like 45 days to find a lover, or they get turned into an animal of their choice. And I thought, okay, that sounds kind of weird and interesting. I want to check that out. And I mean, it has that, but the animal thing actually wasn't really as important as I thought it was going to be. It was kind of weird in that way. But I always find those premises for movies kind of interesting, actually, when it's something about relationships. I don't know why it's always with movies with relationships too. I don't really have much relationship experience. Maybe that's part of the reason I find these movies interesting. But it'll be movies about relationships that like critique them and stuff, but in like a weird way like this. Like the kind of questions they answer. Like there's at least 3 movies I can think of with that I found like all 3 of them really interesting, and I like keep thinking about even after the movie's over, which is this one, The Lobster, which has the whole thing of if you don't find love, you get turned into an animal, which I feel like is some kind of metaphor of like people who are single who believe like, oh, if I don't find love, I'm like going to die and stuff, and how in this world it's treated as like such a horrible thing to be single, because it's like their society is designed entirely around like couples. Or there's this one other one that I watched recently I hadn't seen before, that was like after humanity had ended. I don't remember what it was. I think it was called Love Me. It was kind of also really weird, of like this satellite and this buoy after humanity had ended, and they end up becoming lovers and discovering kind of what it means to become human as they grow like more sentient over the movie, but also more confidence in their romance and stuff. Or there's another one of my personal favorites called I'm Your Man, which I did a review of. I'm thinking of rewatching the movie again and doing another review, because last time I watched it I didn't have any of the subtitles on, and the movie's in German, and I didn't know what the characters are saying, but it was a really interesting like kind of different perspective to not know what they were saying and only and only watching their movements. I feel like I should try that with foreign movies more often, of just like turn the subtitles off and see how my experience changes. But that is one where people can have robot partners, and it's this whole thought of like, if you had a partner that was like perfect for you and like literally designed around you and your interests and everything, would you still want them, whether they're like a robot or not? And I asked my mom about that, and she thought I was just asking like, would you want a robot as a partner, which I feel like is a completely different question to the one I just asked, but whatever. But anyway, those kind of like romance movies where they try to ask bigger questions and sort of critique the nature of relationships and stuff, I just find that really fascinating, and I find those as like interesting movies to watch. So yeah, that's the reason I watched this one. I'm gonna go into like my notes and stuff. Yeah. So something I thought was kind of weird was that almost none of the female characters in this movie have names. Like the kind of nicknames, I give to people in reviews where I describe them a bit is actually the same kind of names that the characters have. Not that they're like referred to verbally by others, but it was like literally in the subtitles, and no one's really referred to by name that much. It's just like, hey, you, or so and so, or they like talk to each other. And it felt kind of funny because like that's actually the way I talk to people a lot of the time, where I don't really address people by name that much. I just kind of talk to them, especially if it's like online or over Discord. And it's not even like I'm trying to be rude and I like know what these people's names are. That's just kind of how I've always been. So that was kind of interesting. But I noticed with this movie, it's mostly just the female characters, especially the love interests of the main character. I think his name's David, if I remember right. But yeah, I thought that was kind of weird because like the male characters, a lot of them have names. So let me see. I'm trying to decide if I wanted to like explain more about the plot or not, but I'll just go into my notes. My phone's gonna like die soon anyway. It's at 12%. This movie, it's kind of interesting. You could see it from the beginning. Their society is very like black and white about things, where things are either a certain way or they're not. Like, the main character, he checks into this hotel where you have to find love in like 45 days or turn into an animal, and they ask him his sexuality, and he says something of like, oh, women, but I've had a gay relationship in the past, and he wanted to be marked down as bisexual, and they said no. I think they said it was like an option that wasn't available, that was like sold out or whatever, but I feel like they were lying and they were just trying to get him to pick to be straight or gay. Like, they literally ask him of like, which one do you want? And I just thought, damn. Like, I think in the world of the movie, I understand why, of maybe like if people are divided by like if they're straight or if they're gay, it would probably be easy for the other people that are like trying to find matches to figure out, probably easier like which ones are available, because the whole point in the hotel is like to get people matched up together and stuff. But that's also freaking sucks of like, what if you're bi? Like, I'm bi, what would I do? Like, if someone went up to me and asked me to pick like, oh, are you gay or are you straight, I wouldn't know what to say because I can't answer that question, which made me wonder of like, do they have a hotel in this movie for bisexuals? Is it like a different experience over there? But yeah, I feel like that was like an early example of something in the movie of what was I going to say? How their world is divided and stuff. I'm gonna pause for a minute. Okay, so the thing with the bisexual thing, besides it being an example of showing how their world is very like black and white in this movie, I was kind of assuming it was going to be something that was more relevant in the movie, especially pertaining to the protagonist, but it's just like this one thing that's brought up in the beginning and then never talked about again. And when the character does get to the hotel, it's mostly straight couples. I think there's like one gay couple, and it's these two people you see at like the very beginning when the characters are having breakfast together for the first time, and that's it. It's like everyone else is paired as like straight couples. And I like that they don't really explain the whole thing of like people turning into animals when they if they don't find love. They keep it kind of vague. Like, there's a line where the main character, he's accompanied by a dog, and he's talking to the hotel person. It's like the same person with about the bisexuality stuff, and they ask him about the dog, and they said, oh, it's my brother or something, or it's my brother's. And it makes it sound as if like the brother has passed away and the main character has just inherited his dog, but then you find out later his brother is the dog. What else? Or there's no half sizes in shoes. There's like not that many other examples like that of like, but I feel like it was a way to show the protagonist is kind of a bit different from everyone else, and trying to find more of like a in-between option of stuff, or trying not to pick the two other options brought in by the society about the shoes or other stuff, and not the fact that those options are just not available or anything. And the main character does turn out to be a bit different from everyone else, the choices that he makes and such. And he's asked what animal he'd want to turn into, and that's why the movie's actually called The Lobster. I actually thought it was called The Lobster because, you know, once I found out about the animal thing, that I just assumed it was going to end with him turning into a lobster. And that's why it had the title, like, that way you're, like, kind of spoiled from the beginning of, like, oh, it's about how, I thought it was going to be that he would fail to find love and get turned into a lobster at the end, and it would be kind of a downer. He actually doesn't get turned into an animal, though, but he picks a lobster, which I thought was actually a pretty good choice, was because he says they live for more than 100 years, it, like, works if you like the sea, and something about them having, like, blue blood or whatever. And it's kind of nice, at least they get to pick what animal they become, because something I'm a little confused about with this movie, I feel like there's a lot of things that it leaves kind of vague, is there's a transformation room, apparently, and some of the characters speculate of, like, oh, they remove your eyes and your brain and your organs and stuff, and they put it inside of the body of an animal and stuff. But, like, there's no way a human brain would be able to fit into some animals. And the thing with the animals in this movie is they're not... they don't have the ability to talk. They don't do things that suggest, like, human thoughts or whatever. Like, they're desperately trying to get your attention to prove, like, hey, I'm a person and not, like, an actual, like, born as an animal or anything. They're just regular animals treated as such. They even get, like, eaten, and the whole thing with being turned into an animal is, like, you have to not just pick, like, an animal that you like. You have to pick an animal you were going to live as to make sure, like, you survive and stuff. Like, a lot of people in this universe apparently pick dogs, and there's so many dogs in this movie. I feel like dogs could be a good choice, because then at least if you're adopted by someone, you automatically, like, have a home, and I'm assuming, you know, unless the person's, like, a piece of shit or something, that they're going to take care of you, and at least you'll have somewhere where you're safe, compared to, like, there's a lot of rabbits in this movie, and the rabbits, you know, get eaten and stuff. But it's kind of crazy, like, you have to pick an animal you're going to be, but it's almost treated as, like, death in a way if you're losing your human consciousness and stuff, and you're just becoming an animal where you're not even gonna probably be you anymore at that point. But I guess you're trying to pick something where you'd think you'd like it if you got turned into an animal. I'm not even sure if they do get turned into animals. I was kind of just wondering about that, because the whole thing is, when I first watched the movie, before they talk about the transformation room, I just assumed you'd, like, naturally morph into an animal. I thought it was going to be, like, some Animorphs type stuff, like the books, of which I don't know those about, but I remember the covers where they, like, slowly turn into an animal or whatever. I thought it was going to be something like that. Like, they would, like, it would be like a body horror type thing where they would, like, slowly turn into an animal if they didn't find love, and then they would just be an animal. But instead it's that they get taken to a room, and we never see the inside of this room. We never see the procedure of someone getting turned into an animal. At one point, the main character takes someone there against their will and turns them into an animal. So it's not just, like, professionals that are, like, using this room. It's like, it's just there at this hotel. It's not designed for, like, anyone to be able to use it. But the fact that we don't see it, all we see is, we see animals later on. Like, there's a blonde woman, and she, they tell her it's gonna be, like, your last day or whatever, and then a couple of scenes later we see a horse that's blonde, and you kind of just have to assume that that's her. But yeah, the fact these animals don't talk or do anything, and they're just animals, I'm wondering if instead, and it would probably fit with, like, the darker themes of the movie, if they're not actually transformed. I was wondering if it was kind of like, and I'm going to be spoiling this if you've never read the book or seen the movie, The Giver. In The Giver, the main characters, or not the main characters, but the characters in that world, they end up supposedly having to get chosen to go through some procedure or whatever, where I don't remember if they get, like, reincarnated or what the heck happens to them. But then you see in actuality where it's like in their society, being chosen for the whatever it is, like, seen as a good thing, and then you actually get to see later on they're just given a shot and they're literally killed, and no one knows that they're being killed, and their bodies are just disposed. And that's that. I thought it was like that in this movie, of, like, no one's actually being turned into an animal, especially because this movie, other than the whole idea of people getting turned into animals and that supposed procedure, entirely is realistic and stuff. There's no, like, fantasy elements in this movie. So I was wondering if it was like they just get into that room and they're killed, and then the hotel people, I guess, just, you know, find and bring out an animal, and they have to tell the person's loved ones of, like, okay, this is your person or whatever. And it's not like there's any way for their loved ones or anybody to know. So yeah, that's pretty crazy, but I don't know if that's true. I'm just speculating. That's what I was thinking. You don't get, like, a confirmation on that or anything. Oh yeah, there's a couple of actors in here I recognized, besides Colin Farrell, who plays the main character. John C. Reilly is in this, and so is, I think his name is Ben Whishaw. He's the guy that voices Paddington. He's also in the 007 movies as Q, but even though that's the movies I saw him in first and what I'm used to him from, I'm just so used to him as Paddington, it throws me off seeing his face. But they're both in this movie. They have minor roles at the hotel where the guy that plays Paddington is like kind of a jerk, and he does end up getting to escape the hotel, but he doesn't actually have anything in common with the woman who becomes his wife. He's just faking it. Because the other thing with their society that's like a really big deal is like if you're a couple, you have to, it's not like you have any kind of like freedom or whatever if you're a couple, and you know those are the ones that are like approved by the society or whatever of like going to the city as it's called. You have to have something in common with the person. So like the guy that voices Paddington, he ends up with a woman who has nosebleeds, so he puts ketchup on his shirt and sometimes cuts his nose to fake nosebleeds so that way they can be a couple. And then if you're a couple that apparently argues, you're given a child to like not argue as much, which is crazy but also really sad because I know that's like a thing that happens in real life where you like baby trap someone and that forces you to stay together because you have a child now. And imagine doing that to that poor kid. But anyway, with the Paddington guy, you see him later on where he lives in a yacht with this woman and they have a daughter, and they were given that daughter, which means that they'd been like fighting and stuff. Otherwise they wouldn't have been given that child. And the children, that's kind of dark to think about too, because you're thinking like, where's the hotel getting all these children from? Well, they're probably getting them from the adults who were turned into animals, and now there's no one to care for these children. Like, it's crazy if your parent or loved one fails the hotel thing and becomes an animal, you just never see them again. They could be out in like a zoo or something. Like John is a character that has a limp. I think that's the name of the Paddington guy. He tries to see his mother as a wolf, and the other wolves attacked him. And the animals can't talk or keep their human intelligence or something. But I can't imagine if you're little and your parent decides to go to this hotel. And the thing is, it's not just like a I actually can't remember if it was only people that go to this hotel to find love, if they get turned into animals, or it's everyone. But they describe that like a lot of these people are widows, and if you have someone pass away, your timer before you get turned into an animal like starts immediately. Like you have to find a partner, even if it's something that's not your fault. Like if your partner cheats on you and leaves or dies, or if your relationship just ends in some way, it's like you have to find a partner immediately or risk being turned into a piano. Not a piano, I'm sorry, an animal. I said piano because my next note says I liked the Piano Greek song when the guests at the hotel are running in the woods. Turned into a piano. No, that would probably be even worse. But there's this whole thing the guests of the hotel have to do where they're given guns with darts in them, and they have to go hunt the quote-unquote loners, as they're called, that are trying to leave the hotel. We get to see more of these people during like the last portion of the movie. Oh, I just want to mention really quick, I actually love this poster. I remember when I first saw it, I was very confused because you can see against his face there's like a shape of something, and you're thinking like, what is he hugging? And then there's another version of the poster where it's the opposite, where it's a woman who's supposed to be hugging him. But I love that it's an outline of a person that he's like very clearly hugging, not just because this woman's identity you get to see towards the end, and these two and their relationships together, and that would spoil the whole thing of like he does find a lover. But the fact that she's like invisible is kind of, this visual I think really represents the movie of like these people that are trying to find their like other half in a sense, even though they're like alone. I think it works perfectly. I think it's such a cool poster. I was a bit sad when I was watching this in HBO Max and they don't have this poster as like the thumbnail for the movie. Let's see. It's creepy of how the hotel has these like little skits about having a partner is better than being alone. Like, you don't choke if you have someone with you, and stuff like that. The skits are like really awkward and awkwardly performed. And the hotel has this thing where they'll have the maids, I don't know what the exact term is, but they'll like rub their butt on your privates and stuff. I think it's just like trying to get you like horny, but then you can't if you decide like, oh, that's hot, and it like gets you kind of horny, if you decide to like masturbate afterwards, which is probably a lot of people's like first instinct or whatever, that isn't allowed. You have to put your hand in a toaster. Oh yeah, that happened to John C. Reilly's character. He has to put his hand in a toaster, and it's weird because all the people do is they put a toaster on his table and they say, okay, stick your hand in, and they're just there watching him. They don't like actually pick it up and shove it in or do anything. I mean, once he puts his hand in the toaster, then the other people, they grab his hand and make sure it like stays there. But that's actually how all the punishments are in this movie, or at least at the hotel, where they don't actually physically force you to do anything. They just kind of tell you, and they're there and they stare at you, and it's more of like you're feeling intimidated and you make yourself do it. It's actually really easy to leave the hotel. None of the guards carry, I don't think there was like any guards really, and no one's carrying like a gun. There are guns, but it's just the guests with their dart guns to like go hunt the loners. The actual staff doesn't have weapons. They don't actually try to stop you if you leave or anything. It's just all ruled, like I said, by like social expectations and stuff, and that's kind of the whole movie too. And eventually there's a group of people that do physically punish you and do stuff, and it's the loners of all people, but I'll talk about that more later. Or I was wondering, I mentioned about like if you just get killed and not turned into an animal, if it's some kind of like scheme for like organ donation or something, because they mention about doing something to your organs. I don't remember like your non-vital ones, but I remember them specifically saying that your blood gets donated to a hospital for people that like need blood, which I guess in that aspect, if you're like not going to use this person anymore, that's good that their insides and stuff can help someone else, even if it's like against their will of being turned into an animal. But the fact that their blood is donated to a hospital, I mean, they'd need blood if they were an animal, so maybe that hints that the people are actually killed. And then there's some people who actually try to like kill, themselves if they don't find a partner. So that way they don't become an animal, because being turned into an animal is like worse than death. And I hesitated in that part because I'm not sure if that kind of thing is like something I'm allowed to say on YouTube. I don't know, but that's what they do in this movie. It's so weird watching all the characters try to talk in this movie. You'd think because these people they know the whole threat. They literally have like a day counter every morning that says you have like 3 days left or whatever. They know that they need to find partners, and then even if you find a partner and you're like, okay, we're dating, you can't just leave either. You have to be like watched by the guards and stuff, and then you eventually end up on like a yacht, and that's kind of it. And then eventually you get to go to the city. It's like a whole procedure. You think that people would desperately be trying to like date each other and be romantic and whatever, but no. Everyone is just trying to find people they have in common with, and they trick each other into getting into relationships. No one's making meaningful connections. They're just trying to find partners so that they don't become animals. And a lot of them are just kind of mean in general. Like, there's this blonde woman who has really nice hair, and the main character goes to talk to her, compliments it, and she's like, yeah, I know. And then she starts asking him if he's gonna go, like, bald someday. Like, people are, like, everyone's so mean in this movie, but they're so desperate to find a partner. They don't really care about each other, so, like, why even be mean at all? If anything, that would make your chances worse. Like, being single is treated as a death sentence. But, like, why does she even have to ask about the baldness thing? Does it matter, And then it's kind of sad on your last day, before you get turned into an animal, if that happens to you, you're encouraged by the staff to do something that only humans can do, like read a book, where they tell you, like, don't waste your last day of, like, walking around or having sex, which are things you can do as an animal or whatever. And that's when I, like, fully realized of, like, oh, they don't get to keep their human intelligence. That does sound terrifying. Of, like, if you knew you were gonna die, and like, I'm never going to be able to, like, read a book again or talk to anyone or whatever, and that sounds horrifying. But the fact that you won't die, the fact that you will be forced to continue, and we don't know if, like, your consciousness or whatever, if you even have, like, your human memories, if you get turned into an animal, it's like crazy to think about. And then there's, like, only, like, two nice people at this hotel. There's a blonde woman I mentioned who gets turned into a pony, and her best friend reads her this really, really nice letter. It's very heartfelt, and I thought, like, wow, maybe these two could have been a couple. They seem like, okay, at least one person seems to deeply care about the other, and the blonde woman just smacks her in the face for doing this. I don't know if it's, maybe she's thinking like, oh, why are you telling me all this and I'm not going to remember you or whatever, what's the point or something, but that was really rude. And there's this woman who's described as heartless, so I'm going to refer to her as the heartless woman. There's a part where there's a failed suicide outside and the heartless woman sees it, and instead of going to get help or something or freaking out, she just sits there and drinks tea, and the other woman is screaming so loud it felt like it was something out of like Monty Python. And then the main character spends part of the movie trying to impress the heartless woman by like being heartless. That was hard to watch. And then she ends up choking on an olive. This part was actually a little funny. She like chokes on something. I don't know if she was pretending to be choked, and the main character doesn't help, and then she turns out to be fine, and she just says, yeah, we're a good match. And then she kicks the main character's brother, who's turned into a dog, to death. We don't actually see it on screen. We literally hear her tell him that, of like, hey, I kicked him to death, here's the noises he made, and she like mimics the noises, and then you see her foot's covered in blood, and then the main character excuses himself to go to the bathroom, and you get just a full-on shot of the dog like bleeding and stuff on the floor. And I assumed, and I was right, when he goes to the bathroom he'd like start crying or something, because, you know, he has a heart. That's his brother. And the fact that this woman just coldly admitted, like, yeah, I killed him, and doesn't show like an ounce of regret or like any emotion on her face. And then she follows him to the bathroom, and he's like, no, I'm not crying, I just have something in my eye, you know, because he has to be heartless, you know, for her. And she slaps him and then says, I'm going to take you to the hotel manager, you're going to get turned into an animal no one wants as punishment. And she says this thing about like relationships shouldn't be built on a lie, which is like a true thing, but like, why is she so heartless anyway? And then the main character shoots her with a dart gun, and there's this hotel maid that helps him, and she's taken by the main character into the transformation room, and the only thing he says is she's like turned into an animal that no one wants to be, and you don't find out what that animal is. I assumed it was either like probably a rabbit or a lobster or something, because you find out that like not many people want to be turned into lobsters, but also the fact that there are so many rabbits outside that are just wandering around. I thought maybe rabbits would be like a punishment animal, and I was thinking of like, this woman is described as like a hunter and stuff, and the way she like literally hunts these loners, so I thought it would be kind of like an interesting twist where she would get turned into a prey animal. I mean, there are no prey animals if you think about it in the real world, but you get what I mean, of like a rabbit. Oh, okay, I have to go back into my notes. My aunt called me. It wasn't actually towards me, it was for someone else, but thought I'd call her back, take the chance to talk. That was nice. Hold on a second. Sometimes people call me, you know, usually it's my brother when I'm in the middle of recording, and then even if I'm talking for like a couple minutes, I completely forget what I was saying in these. Oh, yeah, the hotel maid, she turns out to be a double agent working for the loners, who we're going to see in a bit, because the main character, he turns the heartless woman into an animal, like I mentioned. He gets the hell out of that hotel, and then the rest of the movie is spent with the loners that he's been like having to hunt in the hotel. And the loners are weird, where you can be a loner till the day you die unless you're caught, where, you know, there's no transformation machine out there or anything. It doesn't matter if you find love or not, because, you know, they're loners. Actually, their rule's almost kind of the opposite of the hotel. The hotel is like, okay, you need to find love or you get turned into an animal. And then with the loners, you never have to worry about becoming an animal again. But you're not allowed to flirt or have sex with anyone. If you start a romance, you're going to be severely punished, like physically. Like there's someone whose mouth ends up getting like cut off or something, because he like flirted with someone or whatever. I mean, it's nice in the sense of like, you get to keep your own individuality and personality, because when you're at the hotel, everyone dresses the same. You're not really allowed to like talk about stuff or your interests or whatever. But the loners don't really show any emotion that much or feel empathy towards each other or anything. Like, you'd think they would, because they have the freedom to do those things. But no, you're allowed, I think, to just be like friends with people and stuff, and friendship is fine, but if you go to romance, it's not good. But yeah, no one gets to really be that, to show, even though they get to like keep their individualism, you don't really get to express yourself or anything. And the thing with them being loners is like, and they're not accepted by society, they can't really like make a life in the city. They're able to go to the city, but they have to like pretend to be a couple to go there. They have to survive in the woods, so you just have to survive out there. You can't have like a house or anything. But you get to do what you want rather than things by like the hotel schedule. You get to masturbate, so it has its like checks and balances, really. So if you fall in love with another loner, you're like basically screwed. So then Rachel Weisz, she's introduced the story. I don't remember what her character's name is. I don't think she was actually like given a name in the story, so I'm gonna call her the nearsighted woman, because that's what she gets referred to sometimes. But she's the main character's love interest. She's the one that's actually on the poster, and she's the narrator, it turns out. She's narrating how she met the main character and fell in love with him and the things that they talk about. And she narrates throughout the whole movie too. It's just you don't recognize her voice until you actually get to see her on screen. So I thought that was kind of cool. So, and then if you go to the city, you have to like show to the police that you're married, because you're not allowed to be single. You have to like talk about how you're in love. So the loners are able to go out into society. Like, there's a woman who is just the leader of the loners. She's literally referred to as loner leader, and she goes into the city. She's able to like dress really nice, and so is everyone else. I don't know where these people that are living in the woods are getting such like nice outfits, but she goes into the city and she visits her dad, but she's not like friendly with her dad. It's kind of weird. Her dad seems chill, but the loner leader doesn't show any affection towards her parents that she goes to visit. It's just she goes with the main character and the nearsighted woman to just visit this person's parents. The other people don't get to visit their parents, and that's kind of about it. And then the loners actually also go into society, and they go out and they like literally target and kill couples. I feel like it's kind of a venting thing of like if I can't friend romance, you shouldn't be allowed romance either. And the main character and the loner lady, or not the loner lady, the nearsighted woman, they actually start to get along. And they do kind of follow the rules of the hotel in the sense that they're both not really able to see very well. Both, I think, actually being like nearsighted. Like, one of them wears glasses, one of them wears contact lenses. And that kind of starts as the thing where it's like, okay, they have something in common, and they start talking, and then they eventually become lovers. The loners are able to like have dance parties and stuff, but their dance parties are like a silent disco where they dance alone with music in their earbuds, and it's like to electronic music, so that they don't try to like they're not even allowed to dance together, even just, you know, for fun. They don't really look like they're having fun either. They're not smiling, they're not like making any noise. It's so weird to watch. It actually kind of reminds me of like That's How My Prom Was. I'm not even kidding. Like, there was one big room where it was like kind of a disco floor and everyone was dancing together, but everyone was so close together and it was so loud, I got like way too overstimulated and I went outside, and there were just people in the room on the rest of the roof doing like a silent disco thing. But that was kind of awkward too, so I didn't really end up dancing at prom, but it just made me think about that, and it was so awkward to watch. And then meanwhile, the main character and the the nearsighted woman, they get a dance scene together, and their dance scene is actually really nice. It's kind of nice to compare the two, where they still have to plug in their music, but they do this thing where they try and start the song at the same time as a way to sort of like synchronize, and then they just very gently sway, and like we, the audience, can actually hear their music this time. I don't think with the other dance scene you couldn't hear anything, but with the main characters you get to hear just a little bit of their music. I don't remember what it sounds like. It was kind of hard for me to hear, but they just kind of gently sway together. It's actually really sweet to watch. And then from that point onwards, I was like actually kind of invested. Or they have this code thing that they do with their body language, so that way they can communicate without anyone guessing that they're lovers. They have to hide their love. And one of their codes, they have 4 codes, but the one that was my favorite is they have one that just means I love you more than anything in the world, and that's so adorable. But their other ones are I want to dance in your arms, let's fuck, and we're in danger. And then there's this romantic guitar music that plays. They go to visit the loner lady's dad, and her parents are playing guitar, and it's this really romantic guitar song that I swear I've heard before, but I don't know the title of the song. And the nearsighted woman and the main character, they start smooching. They have to pretend to be lovers anyway when they like visit these people, but they like really get into like making out and stuff. I don't blame them actually, because I was thinking at first like that's going to be way too suspicious if you get like way into like making out with each other. It's going to look too realistic because they're like trying to blend in. But the guitar music was so good, I'd probably start making out with someone too, and it's like very kind of romantic and gentle sounding. And then they start getting noticed by other people. One of them, I think it's the woman, but I'm not completely sure, is writing all these romantic notes of like the plans she wants to do when she gets to the city, spending time with the main character, and the loner leader finds out. So she tricks the woman. She takes the nearsighted woman into the city to say like, yeah, we're gonna get your eyes fixed. And the woman, it's kind of awkward. Like she has the ability to leave and run away, but the loner lady like guilt trips her into it of saying like, I called months ago to get you this operation and stuff, and this doctor's very hard to get, and just making her feel guilty, which kind of forces her to stay. And then she ends up getting blinded, and it's because it'll take away the one thing she actually has in common with the main character. So she's like made blind as punishment. And then it's kind of sad that they don't have that thing in common anymore, and you think like, oh, whatever, people don't have to have things in common, but they're probably so used to being ruled by that from their society, where he like asks her questions. He doesn't abandon her or anything, which is actually really nice. I kind of expected him to, but he asks her questions of things he knows are like, of like, if she knows German, does she like certain kind of fruits or whatever, and she doesn't know or like any of these things. So they don't really, I kind of get it of like they don't really have anything in common, and if you don't really have anything in common with like the person you're like trying to be in love with, it would probably be hard to maintain a relationship, because it's like, what can you really do together that you both enjoy? I mean, at that point you could just learn to love each other's other things and just still love each other as people and spending time together, but I can imagine it becomes harder. If anything, they sort of just kind of seem to fall out of love for a little bit. And I was surprised they didn't just run to the city at that point. Like, all they kind of do is they try to retrain the woman's sight in a sense of, like, having her touch things to guess stuff. And then they end up killing the loner leader. They take her in the middle of the night and put her in a grave. The main character does. And these dogs show up, and you kind of assume the dogs are going to, like, eat her or something. And they do it really easily while she's sleeping. And I was thinking, like, why the hell didn't they do this earlier in the movie? I mean, neither of them knew that the nearsighted woman was going to be blinded, but then they just immediately escape, and I'm like, why the hell did you wait so long? Because the thing is, there wasn't any like danger. I think the one person that would have stopped them was the loner lady, and they end up taking her in the middle of the night and punishing her anyway. So, and it's not difficult at all. So I'm like, if it was that easy to punish her and to get through that obstacle, they could have done it like way sooner. But then they get to go to the city, and they go to a diner, and the main character asks for a steak knife, but he doesn't order any food, and then it turns out he decides to blind himself. I didn't know if, like, he wanted to be blind to see, like, what it was like to, like, be with the the nearsighted woman, of like maybe they're more equal if they're like both blind. Maybe he felt weird like taking care of her for being blind, or maybe just not having anything in common. He like wants them to have something in common so badly he's like willing to lose his sight over it. Or maybe it was like the society won't accept them if they don't have anything like actually in common like that. And it's sad because like he was having to guide his lover at that point of like guiding her by the hand to be able to escape. And I'm thinking like if they're both blind, wouldn't that make their lives so much harder? I just can't really imagine. I'm like trying to put myself in the shoes of the main character, but like blinding yourself on purpose, especially the way he does it. He goes into a bathroom and he literally just puts like a rag inside his mouth and like holds a steak knife up to his eye, and it gets really close there. I'm so glad they didn't have a zoom in or anything, because I get icky about like people stabbing things or stuff near their eyes. Heck, I don't even like in real life putting on like eye makeup or anything. I just don't, because I don't like the touch of things near my eyes. But we don't actually see him blind himself, so we don't know if he does it. Like it just shows him in the bathroom holding up the knife, and then it cuts to 2 minutes of the nearsighted woman just sitting alone at the diner as like cars and stuff are passing by, and that's it. And then the movie ends. I do like that it ends in that way of like you don't know if he blinded himself. But I mean, whether he did or not, they at least, they killed the loner lady. It is sort of happy in the sense of like they escape to the city. They do get to be together. I mean, they're already a couple that's in love, so they don't have to worry about that part of like faking a relationship to be in the city or anything. It's just more of them like learning how to go through life while being blind. They don't have to worry about being turned into an animal or anything, which was like the biggest worry at the beginning of the movie. So they at least get to have a life together. And you know what? I've seen a lot of romance movies where they end up in like messed up situations or whatever at the end. So like with this, the fact that they get to be together and they're both alive and not turned into animals, that's happier than several other endings I've seen, so I'll take it at this point. I don't view it as a downer. But yeah, at first I didn't really like the movie and I didn't really want to watch it. But then I got into it. I think the hotel stuff at the beginning was just interesting to me because they liked the whole challenge of like if they don't find love, they'll be turned into an animal. And it made me expect the main character to be turned into an animal. And the middle's kind of just like when he's like kind of with the loners at first, and like when he's trying to think of like leaving the hotel and stuff. And then there's not nearly as many important characters at all. Then it just kind of goes to being mostly like the loner lady and the main character couple and stuff. But I like the end when they become lovers, and it's really nice. You can see the differences between like what genuine love between both parties feels like compared to how forced it is at the beginning with the people in the hotel. I mean, the main character's relationship is still kind of ruled around the idea of like you have to have at least one thing in common with your partner. And I've noticed it's usually like physical things in this movie, not like, oh, we both like pancakes or whatever. It'll be like, oh, we both have a limp, we both have nosebleeds, we're both like blind or something. And I'm wondering if maybe that's because that's something you can like physically prove, or it's easier to prove to the police. I don't know. But I find this movie interesting as like a critique of relationships, of that, you basically die in a sense of like becoming an animal if you end up not finding love, and how you can compare that to relationships of like single people, of you feel like you're going to die if you don't like find love. And in this movie it's taken more to that extreme where you supposedly get turned into an animal. And I mean, I get it. I'm single. I've been single for a while. And I understand that thing of like, when I'm on my own and I'm just like living my life, I'm not really thinking of like romance and stuff that much. Maybe sometimes, but I'm like happy. I'm with family and friends. But then when I'd hear about like my friends talk about their partners, or I'd see stuff about that back when I was in like college or whatever, you kind of can feel, or at least I did, like a little tinge of jealousy of like, wow, it must be so nice to like have somebody in like a relationship like that, and it kind of makes you want one. So I understand with this movie of like the characters wanting relationships, but I think it's, in this it's more so of less of like I want a relationship and more of like I mean, they are choosing to go to the hotel willingly. It's not like they're forced there or anything, but it's that they get punished if they don't find a relationship, so you can't really find like meaningful connections. But yeah, I'm glad that I decided to finish it because it changed my perspective. I ended up liking the movie a little bit more, and I was okay with it. I think maybe I did enjoy it more than Poor Things. Poor Things felt, it was weird, and I liked that of it, but the sexual stuff in it constantly happening was making me like kind of uncomfortable, and it felt kind of confusing, and kind of a bit more like a downer. So I think surprisingly, now that I'm like fully thinking about it, I think I do like this one a bit more. I don't know if I'll watch other movies. Like I mentioned, there's one where Emma Stone's character gets mistaken for an alien. If I find that on streaming, maybe I'll watch it too. I don't know, these are kind of nice to watch like every once in a while, but I don't want to watch like too many weird movies that kind of hurt my brain like in a row, or else I just kind of bum myself out. I mean, there's more stuff I want to watch. I'm like in the middle of watching Christmas movies. I'm gonna watch Knives Out, the third one, and at the time recording this, it just came out, and I'm gonna rewatch the German one I mentioned about the robot, because it got added to Netflix, and I'm really happy about that because I can watch it with English subtitles, or I'm gonna choose to watch it with English subtitles this time. Yeah, maybe I'll do a review of that again, just to like, now that I'll be able to understand like all the dialogue and stuff, because I think wherever I was watching it last time, it didn't have the subtitles or anything. It was kind of weird. But yeah, see you next time.